Welcome to Noble, a network of owners, business leaders, and entrepreneurs. Here, we focus on the 5 stages of business: launching an idea, establishing a business, hiring employees, creating leaders, and then expanding your impact. We hope you enjoy today's session.
Thank you.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much for joining us today. Megan, thank you for the introduction. And we're just excited to have you on today and be able to talk more with folks about their finances and how to best take care of them, and especially with business owners, the complexities that can be there, that they really, I think, is better off to have somebody else having a great set of eyes on them. I've always known that even with people that do books really, really well, I think it's always great advice that somebody else has a set of eyes on them for a number of reasons, and I think we'll get into that a little bit today. But I always like to ask people first off, just tell us a little bit about little Danielle and how you were as a child, and was that business bug inside of you when you were younger to have your own business, or how did that come about?
Thank you for having me here today, Chaz. I appreciate it. And so little Danielle, I grew up in a Christian home. So I've always had accepted Christ as a child. And so have always had that sense that there was a purpose that God had for me. But it's actually been just recently that I finally kind of feel like God has shown me what that is. So as a child, I don't know that I necessarily had a business bug. I did start work as 12, 13 years old at our local library. So hard work has always been, my dad worked. My mom stayed home with us when we were younger, worked outside the home as we got older. But that work ethic has always been demonstrated in my family. And I started working at a young age and started taking accounting courses my sophomore year in high school, knew that was what I wanted to do. And, people say, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And so I really believe that's true. It's not just a job for me, it's a passion. And I think once everything started to kind of become more cloud-based is really when I started to feel like, hey, this is something I could do as a business on my own. When my kids were born, I stepped out of the corporate world to be home with them. And because things were starting to be cloud-based, I was able to continue working and serving clients while I was raising my children and stay in the accounting field. So it's kind of just grown since then. And as Megan said in the introduction, kind of recently rebranded and repurposed what I felt like God was calling me to do. So here's where I am today.
There you go. Well, you said you grew up in a Christian home. So tell us a little bit about that, and how influential were your parents, or was it them plus a pastor plus small groups plus friends? I mean, really, what helped to lead you to the Lord?
It really was my parents. If the church doors were open, we were there. My dad was a WANA commander, a deacon, involved in church leadership. My mom was involved as well, teaching Sunday school, working with different areas. And like I said, if the doors were open, we were there. We just knew that Sundays, Wednesdays, special meetings, mission conferences, where we were going to be was in church. But my salvation specifically, my mom had us involved in I can't even remember the name of it. I remember it had a green owl, but it was a correspondence course for children specifically. And we were, and it was Bible based, and we were working through one of the lessons. And the last question was about having trusted Jesus as your savior. And I told my mom, I'm like, Mom, I haven't done that, but I want to. And so I was able to, my mom was able to lead me to the Lord right there at our kitchen table. So it was great to have that influence in my life as I was growing up.
That's great. That's great. So tell us a little bit about the progression from uh, I know you're working full time right now for two companies, two IT companies, and your role as a controller for those companies. So what helped you to move from not only handling accounting and books and things like that for companies as a full-time job, but then also then being able to start a company and be able to fit that in with your family, with kids and husband and all the volunteer work that you love to do, things like that. How are you able to fit that in?
As I said, I was in the corporate world, and then when my kids were born, I started working from home for some private clients. A lot of it was church, people from church. They would find out, business owners in our church would find out this is what I did, and they'd be like, "Hey, can you help me?" And so it was a lot of just word of mouth. But then I was able to maintain those clients when I did go back into the workforce as my kids got older. I still had that client base already, and I didn't really want to let it go. So I kind of just maintained it. At first, it was pretty small. I wasn't really looking to grow. I just wanted to kind of keep the ones that I had going. Um, but then, recently, as I started getting a little bit older and kind of seeing retirement years in the not too distant future, I felt like God was really leading me to be more intentional and to rebrand, refocus, but be a little more intentional about growing that side business so that one day it will be basically what supports me and allows me to work part-time and in retirement from home. So that's kind of been the progression. As far as how to maintain it all, it's hard and it's not always been easy. And I've not always been successful. And there are days that my family would say, "Why are you doing this? Like, why are you doing this to yourself? And why are you doing this to us, actually?" um,
Okay.
but there's, a lot of just knowing that this is really what I felt God had called me to do. And so just a lot of prayer and working with business mentors. I know Noble provides mentorship for business owners, and that's so key. For me, working with a business mentor who's really helped me. Really, her program's called Redeem Her Time, and that's really what it's been all about, is how to balance all of those responsibilities, the 8 key areas of life that we have to pay attention to, or they'll demand attention. How do we do that and do it successfully? And so a lot of it has been having mentors in my life who hold me accountable and give me some ideas and show me different ways of looking at my time, to help make sure that there is a balance. And nothing's being, life happens, and there are sometimes you've got to give more attention to work, and there's sometimes you've got things going on at family and you've got to give more attention to family. And um, I like to really refer to it as work-life harmony, because it's never really going to balance. Their scales are always going to be tipped one way or another. But if you can really, trust God, a lot of prayer, seeking scriptures, and then applying practical, biblical time management tips to make sure that you're able to keep everything in harmony that God has called you to do, whether it's volunteering or whether it's business or whether it's being a full-time employee or mom or wife, or, all those things that all those roles that we all have that demand our attention every day.
That's good. That's good. I'd like to dive in a little bit more that you said that you've had multiple mentors.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about how you've selected those mentors and how you work with them. Frequency, And there you mentioned accountability, things like that. Tell us a little bit how you've selected those and how you've worked with different ones, and how that's really helped you.
I had a mentor when I was working full time, just out of college. He was a CFO for a company that I worked for, and he was a Christian. And um, he just, as me being newly out of college and just really learning how getting my feet wet in the accounting field, he was just really encouraging. Always encouraged me. Um, one of the things that he said was, if you do your job well, it makes me look good. So it only benefits me to help you achieve everything you can possibly achieve. There was no, oh, if somebody's going to want my job, they're going to want to move up the ladder. It was a very, um, I guess, symbiotic relationship, just kind of, helping to encourage and helping me grow in my knowledge and in my practical skills. And so I don't know that I necessarily chose him. It was someone who happened to be where I was. God provided that person for me as a baby accounting person, to encourage me in my growth. And then more recently, the mentor that I chose, like I said, she's a business mentor, but specifically addresses time management. Specifically, that's her focus. And that it was something I knew, a couple of years ago, that I was not handling things the way that they needed to be handled. Life was not harmonious, and I needed to do something different. And God connected with her on social media. She was having like a mini seminar that was going to be recorded. Um, we just immediately clicked, and I knew that was someone that I wanted to be involved with. And then she offered a more intensive, full year program, and I didn't have the finances for it. I didn't know how it was going to work out. And I initially told her, no, I'm not going to be able to be part of that program. And she said, well, I'm going to pray for you. And I said, well, I'm going to pray. And we prayed together and separately. And then God just provided the finances for me to be able to be part of that program for a year. And so um, that's been really helpful for me recently, and just watching how God, moved me from trust and dependence on Him to providing that I really wanted to be part. I knew that it would be helpful to me. I knew that it would be a blessing to my business and help me grow. And just trusting Him to provide for that was a great journey, as well as working with her as a mentor for the last year.
Very good. Um, I know that you just recently got your MBA from Mount Vernon Nazarene, okay,
Mm-hmm.
University. So, how is education been important for you for getting into the role? I think you mentioned that your sophomore year in high school that you decided that accounting numbers was your thing, right? And that you wanted to move forward and be in that. But how has the education prepped you for that? What have you done specifically that's helped you along the way, to get the knowledge and prep you for what you do?
I think it's important to always be learning education. My mom's a teacher, so education has always been emphasized in our home. Um, and So my mom has advanced degrees. My sister has a doctorate. It's just one of those things that we were encouraged to do as we were growing up. Um, and so even though, I did go to college for accounting, and then I did several years later, when my kids were grown, go back for my MBA. Um, I've always tried to maintain, even though I'm not required to have CPE courses, because I'm not state licensed. Um, I have maintained, I've looked up those courses. I've become part of organizations like the IMA, Institute of Management Accountants, that provide educational opportunities. And I just try to take advantage of as many ones as I can, and then read as many books as I possibly can. So um, it's always important to be learning. There's always new things out there to learn.
completely agree. We gotta, if nothing else, keep studying the Bible and understanding what God has for us in purpose and how He's speaking to us through His Word, right? Um,
Absolutely.
but you've worked full time for businesses. You've got other clients that you represent. Tell us some of the common issues, mistakes that businesses make, some of the things that they don't know oftentimes what to look out for to protect them, and making sure that they're appropriately putting things in the right place in the right order financially, things like that. Just share some of those things that businesses get in trouble with if they're not watching their numbers very closely.
Um, well, it's definitely important to know what your numbers are, and I do think that a lot of business owners, and I've had them come to me after the fact to fix things. So I've been in these situations, but oh, I can handle it on my own. I've got this. I can get an accounting software and I can fix. And while that's true, you can go on YouTube and you can learn. There are just a lot of things that can be problematic if you're not familiar with how the software works, or if you're not familiar trying to do it on your own without somebody. Even if you can't afford to hire someone,
Mm.
maybe someone who can just consult with you, who can just review your books, who can, like you said, be a second set of eyes to see that you are classifying it correctly. Is something deductible? Is it not deductible? Like, there are a lot of different things that it's really important for business owners to know, that you can't always, just pick up on your own. So I think I've had several people come to me where we've actually had to scrap their books and start all over again because, they were like, oh, I've got this, I can figure it out. And they got 6 months down the road and they're like, my numbers don't look right. I know I didn't have this much revenue, and they were duplicating things. And
Mm.
so having somebody to, there's SCORE, there's Noble, there's a lot of different organizations that can come alongside you, even if you can't pay someone necessarily to help you, that can really help you stay on track and identify any of those areas where there might be a gap. So,
Well, that's good. That's good advice. I certainly with Noble, we do a lot of one-on-ones, a lot of mentoring, and we find that so many people do try to do it on their own, especially at the beginning because they're trying to bootstrap their business and save on costs. And so I know when I started, and for many years, I just used spreadsheets, right, to keep the numbers in order. And when I first gave that to my bookkeeper, it's like, well, you know, she could handle it, but it was like, much better if it was in QuickBooks or something like that. Um, but numbers are so important, and it's based on taxes and just all those kinds of things that you can get in trouble for. Do you have any experience, without naming any clients? Obviously, do you have any experience where somebody's gotten themselves into a real bind by not really knowing the laws, not knowing things that they should have been doing, and maybe had some penalties or things like that without the proper advice?
I have not personally experienced that, but I do know people who have. I have had some clients ask me to do things that I was like, yeah, no, we're not going to
Not
do
gonna
that.
do it. Yeah, not gonna do it. Well, I get that.
Excuse me.
Um, and I'm sorry that you're going through this. I woke up this morning myself with felt like a golf ball in my throat. It's just a very sore throat. It went away, thank God. But boy, it was. I was afraid this morning I wasn't going to be able to talk. And that's just the weather we're going through, especially in Columbus right now. If that's where people are watching, because we've got a little snow on the ground and pretty cold weather. But let me ask you this: one of the things that you got, in your on your website and whatnot is approaching business finance through the lens of biblical generosity. What does that mean?
Um, well, I think that the Bible's very clear that our businesses are not our own. Deuteronomy 8, when Moses was speaking to the Israelites as they were going into Canaan, he said, "Beware lest you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gotten me this wealth. You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he that gives you the power to get wealth." And then later in 1 Timothy, it says, as for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty nor set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God. They are to be good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, that they might take hold of what is truly life. Mm-hmm. And so I think biblical principles are that our businesses are given to us so that we can give to the kingdom. That's why we're here, to glorify God. So when I'm working with my clients, my purpose is to help Christian business owners incorporate principles of stewardship and generosity in their daily finance operations. Yeah, we need to pay, take care of our families, and we need to do all those things, but we're also commanded to be generous. And then when we are being generous, we're taking hold of what is really life. Randy Alcorn wrote a book called Giving is the Good Life, and he made a statement: stewards who are unclear as to who owns or does not own the assets they manage become embezzlers. Mm. Well, who owns, that really struck me. Like, am I embezzling from God? Am I his steward managing his assets? Am I asking him, where should my finances go? Maybe the question that we should be asking is not how much we should give, but how much we should keep. And so I just really want to, in my business, approach finances a little bit differently with kingdom-minded business owners. In that, yes, we're managing your finances, we're keeping current, we're keeping you compliant, but we're having those accountability conversations about how are you impacting the kingdom with this business that God has given you. And so I think that's where the generosity and the stewardship comes into play.
Wow, embezzlement. That's a big word, but it's really true. Certainly meeting with many businesses in those early stages there, again, as I mentioned, many of them just try to handle the finances on their own to begin with spreadsheets and those kinds of things. But the vast majority of businesses that I meet with that are already up and running, they're not, they're not kingdom businesses, right? The owner might be a churchgoer, they might be tithing on their own as a family, but they don't link God with their business. And the fact that that's something that you work with and encourage with your clients, I think is tremendous. But boy, that's a big word, embezzlement. But in reality, that is. I mean, God's given us the skills that we have, right, to be able to do a business, to be able to do work, right? But then also, we're supposed to be tithing. We're supposed to be, glorifying God and in that being able to give to others through charity or whatever, and to the church, and help others to grow and glorify and do good works through the church. So I love what you do in that regard. And as you say too, there are greater things than profit, right? Mm-hmm. So what have you experienced personally as you give more? The Bible says that when you give more, we're blessed, right? In multitudes and multiplication, right? So what have you seen in yourself when you're faithful in your giving? And then how have you seen maybe some of your clients change and how their businesses are affected when they become more generous and that becomes a part of what their business does?
I think a lot of it is definitely in our heart and our mindset. I've seen God provide in ways, I'm not sure how I'm going to make this tithe, because if I tithe, then I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. And and yet every month the bills are paid. And so I think that we do see that. I see it personally, that God was saying he wanted me to do something more than I was doing. And I was like, I can't, there's no way. But when I was obedient, he still provided. And it didn't work out on paper. I couldn't explain it, but he did. And I just think that this year I had specifically set a plan of some things I wanted to do, and creating a generosity account from my business that I deposited into each month. And I had a couple of things come up where people had needs, or friends were contributing to, they had a fundraiser that they were doing because they were, working with Operation Christmas Child. And I didn't even have to think twice. I was just able to say, I can help, I can do this. I can be part of assisting in this way. And I think just that, that knowing that we are able to, we don't have to think about it. We're just able to help further God's gospel financially. It's just such an amazing opportunity. And like I said, when we are obedient, God somehow, provides. It may not look like it on paper. When I talk with clients, I like to, well, I think I can give this, I can, okay, well, but how can we, maybe we give that little bit more. Like, I don't want you not to be able to buy your groceries, but how can we give that little bit more where it's moving into the, oh, well, I've got this much. Okay, but can we trust God for a little bit more? And so it's exciting to see that happen.
Wow. I love the generosity account. I really, yeah. Me with my business, and certainly with family, we have, folks that we give to monthly, folks that we give to annually, things like that. And we know who those are, right? Those are kind of on our monthly schedule, or auto withdrawal, or whatever they might be. And we recognize that as what it is. But you're right, other things just kind of come along. And unfortunately, at our church here locally, and where Noble was founded, at Oasis City Church in Westerville, one of the members of the congregation, their house burned down in the last 7 days. And the church has a weekly alms account, which is biblical, and so people give $1. And I think that more than that sometimes, but they give at least $1 to that in the church. And so that when the church has that account, and it's kind of like a generosity account, I love that. In the fact that they can immediately respond without going to the congregation or going to finance, and how can we pull this out of a budget or what? It's already there, right? Over and above the normal giving that we give. So I love the generosity account. I'm going to have to rebrand that for me, because they come along, and you never know when a friend needs $50, or somebody maybe that you don't even know needs something. And what a great thing to be able to do, for others, is to have an account like that.
It's the mindset. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, I was stopping. So
it's the mindset.
That's fine.
You're good. Yeah. So Angela wrote, "You're a trooper for being here, Danielle," which is so true, because I don't think I could have personally done this last week with my cough. So
you had one. Yeah.
I
You
had
had
a really bad cough last week. And then once you start, it's kind of hard. Once you start talking, every time you talk, it kind of comes.
It gets worse. Well, she mentioned before Deuteronomy 8:17 through 18, that God provides the ability to gain wealth. And I've experienced that myself, that when you put it into God's hands, he's going to bless your plans, right? and help you to plan your blessings, right? He doesn't want us to fail, right? He wants businesses to succeed. And we go back to the tribes of Issachar and Zebulon, and how those two tribes work together. One provided spiritual guidance to the other tribes, and the other tribe was the merchant tribe, and they're the ones that enabled the other tribe not to have to work, right? Or at least not to have to go and earn money, right? So it was two tribes that were supporting each other. And also, Ecclesiastes 11:2 talks about having, multiple sources or multiple ventures to be able to keep you from, for any one source of income to go away, and to be able to do that. So it encourages us business-minded folks to get into business and maybe have a side hustle that if the job starts, something happens with the job or something happens with the business, you've got other options of savings and various things to protect you. Those are all important when you're operating a business. And she also mentioned 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19, he also commands us to be generous with our wealth, for multiple purposes, right? We should all understand our purpose, and Noble is big on that. The people really need to know what their purpose is. Dr. Miles Monroe, who I love to listen to his sermons and topics, says that only 1% of the world ever fully understands or studies what their purpose is. And how can we fulfill God's purpose if we don't stop and recognize what his purpose is for us? And therefore, knowing how to fulfill that purpose with financial wealth as well, not just with our skills, but with financial success and wealth too. So it's certainly generosity is just one of those big things that we need to put our mind on, and we need to plan for. And having somebody like Danielle Foxx who helps us be accountable, all right, for for that generosity, I think is important, because we're always sometimes weighing, new freezer's starting to go bad, new freezer,
Right.
or making that donation that we typically make every month, and that organization counts on us, to make those, but we go and buy the freezer, right, or whatever. And at least in my experience, I found that when I continue to be obedient and continue to be faithful, God takes care of then the refrigerator, right? Something happens that the refrigerator gets taken care of or gets fixed, whatever. So so generosity certainly is a big factor that we all need to be thinking about, especially as business owners. So how are you feeling, Danielle? Are you feeling a little bit better?
I think so.
Okay.
We'll try.
We'll jump back in with whatever.
It has to be a practice, which is the making it part of your budget, making it the first thing you see every month.
Yeah.
Even if it's $1, just if you start if you start here, if you start now, then as your business grows, you're already used to seeing that come out every month.
Mm-hmm.
And so that amount can just grow.
Yeah. It's easy for us to have those other things automatically withdrawn, right? The TV, subscriptions that we have, and those kinds of things that Netflix and things that we automatically have. But you're right. We need to go ahead and budget that and make sure that we're doing that automatically. And the best way to do it is just to have it automatically withdrawn, and you've got that pre-planned in your budget, so that you're not tempted to not pay it, right? So if it's an auto withdrawal, if it's an automatic subscription, then it's like it becomes that way, and it becomes routine. And so I love that. You've got to budget for it. You also have mentioned, obviously, we've got to prep for our family, that at least that other 80-90%, that we have that's beyond, our business expenses. And when you're talking about a family, that's taking care of your family, it's paying for your home, it's paying for, all the other factors, our health care, those kinds of things that we have. But when it comes to a business, right, we got to take care of our laborers. We've got to take care of those folks, that are working for us, who have families, right, that need to make sure that they're getting taken care of. And that's a big challenge for business when they start hiring those first employees. Is those employees, need to come first. Certainly God comes first, those ties. Second should be those families, and those people that are working for us. And we as owners should be third, right? At best, and taking care of everything else before we're able to take care of ourselves. And I think that's so important, because when we hire that first employee, we're taking care of another family with our business, and that's so important.
I totally agree. Generosity is a goal. You want to have goals for your generosity. It's nice to have an account and have it just ready. But you can also have goals and plans. What do I want to do? And one of those things needs to be, how do I care for the employees? How am I creating a plan for a 401k or health benefits or any of those other things? That's all part of the generosity and planning for it, for sure.
Right, right. What kind of, percentage wise, or that maybe that's just a quick number for you, as far as clients that you represent, um, what's your rule of thumb, for the rainy day, for the, there again, the broken piece of equipment, the whatever that happens with a company? Do you have a percentage or a suggestion that oftentimes you give to your clients as far as what they should set aside for the unknown? Kind of like the generosity account for those things that come along, to be generous with. But do you have a rule of thumb that you use to put away for businesses to, kind of for those mishaps that might come along in the business, broken piece of equipment, things like that?
I don't have a general rule. It's specific to the clients and working with them. But I do kind of have a percentage breakdown of categories that we need to be planning for. And then that percentage will vary based on each client, and kind of adjusting. And it adjusts as they go. They might have a higher percentage going to one thing to start, and then it might be able to, increase that percentage in another area as they go. So I wouldn't say that it's across the board a specific percent. It's more a structure of those things that we're planning for and making sure something is going toward each of those various categories.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Good, good. Well, the last thing that I had down is just challenging, anyone that is on today or watching in the future, to understand what's God's calling for you in your business, right? What is your purpose of your business? And then, who you're serving and understanding your target audience, right? And what value you're bringing that audience. But what more can we do, for society? What more not only we do for our clients, whether it's a product or service, but what more can we do for society? And that's the generosity part. And there are so many businesses, and I know that you've got some great examples of some businesses that don't just give 10%. The business doesn't just give 10%. They might start with 10, but then maybe their goal is to hit 20 at some point, and then maybe 30. And then we've heard stories, right, of businesses that give 80, 90, and they keep the 10 to operate their business or whatever. So they kind of flip the numbers. So it's not 10%, of the business tithing, but where they completely flip it. And it's 80, 90% of the business. And I know that you have some stories about that.
Yeah, Archie Letourneau was an example of this, and he created earth moving machines back in the World War II era. And he gave 90% and kept 10. And he said he was God's business partner. It was all God's. And so he asked God what to do with everything, not just, 10%. So yeah, it's a great, a great mindset change when we really see everything as God's and not ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know personally that it's certainly great taking care of your clients, certainly great taking others, but when you give, I don't think there's too many things that are a better feeling than when you give and you give lovingly and without any hesitation, right? With that giving. And we give, and there, it's just such a blessing of that, how that makes you feel. It lifts you. It makes you feel better about serving your clients. It makes you feel better about how you take care of your employees, all those kinds of things when you give, and so I think it's such a great example that you provide to your clients. And I know that if anybody out there that watches this has any interest in talking to Danielle of maybe her helping your business to not only be an advisor from an accounting perspective, but maybe just an accountability partner to encourage you to move forward. And how do you best do that from a budget stand? How do you find the money, right, from different buckets within your business to start putting a little bit, as you said before, just $1 to start off with, but then continue to add to that and grow that over time so that your business maybe does one day give 90% in its generosity. So Danny, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll open it up just in case anybody has any questions that they might want to ask of you. So, any questions?
Just more of a comment. Thank you so much, Danielle. I feel like this was really good. And like we said, giving with that joyful heart, but not just giving personally, but in your business as well. So I thought this was really great. And thank you for being on. I know you're sick and I hope you have a speedy recovery, but we do appreciate you.
Well, if there's no questions, we'll go ahead and close. And I'll just ask Danielle if she has the strength to give any closing comments. And oftentimes, what we ask is, what recommendations, do you give to a new business that's starting up, of how they can do it a different way, how they can think about when they're starting their business to be more generous and that kind of thing. So any advice that you'd like to give to a new entrepreneur, or certainly existing ones, we'd love to hear it, Danielle.
Definitely start where you are and start with something, as far as the generosity piece. And find someone to make sure that even if it's just quarterly, to go over the books with you and review them, because your numbers are so much more than a tax return. They tell you, are you on track with your goals? Are you achieving the things you want to? Are you going to be able to take care of your employees? And if you don't have constant sight into those things, there's a lot of valuable information that you're losing. So making sure that you're tracking it, you're staying current, you're staying compliant, and definitely reaching out to resources like Noble, or Small Business Association or SCORE, to get help as you're starting up. There are a lot of free resources. Take advantage of those, because your books are really, really important, not just for to keep you out of trouble with the IRS, but also to give you the information you need to be successful in carrying your business forward. So those would be my tips. And don't forget to track your mileage. People forget that all the time.
Absolutely. Well, Noble's one of Noble's taglines is doing business God's way. And I think that folks really need to take a serious look at, is their business God's way, right? And do we see in the vision, the mission, the daily activity, the generosity of your business being, doing business God's way? So we certainly through Noble love to challenge businesses to do that, and that's why we love bringing on speakers like Danielle, who do it. Okay, and does it for her clients, does it for herself, with her business and her family. And if you don't know how to get there, then we'll help you reach out to Danielle, and she can give you some advice, or maybe even become a client for her, and help you out with those kinds of things. But Megan, I'll turn it back over to you, or to do.